In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. You know, when a child starts to walk, they are usually led by two things, this finger and this finger. And you see the child hold on like little handlebars, and the parents walking behind them with their fingers up, and the child's got jello legs and just kind of jiggling back and forth and bowing it, bending its knees, and the parents sometimes will lift the child off the ground. And as you see, as a child starts to walk, they start to feel this need to walk, even when they're crawling. They start to get up, they start to climb up on things with this desire to walk, to become mobile. And for those who know, as you see children, as they start out from the index fingers, and then they start with the parents behind them, holding them up and occasionally letting go and walking behind them. And then the child even senses more of the freedom and starts to climb up on things and starts to get up and get their land legs going, and then they fall backwards or whatever the case is. But as children grow, the parent goes from the fingers to the grab behind them, ushering them, to going on the other side of the room and calling them to walk towards them, putting their hands out. And sometimes you'll see the kids, they run like little robots, and then they kind of dive in at the last minute or kind of do like a football dive into the hands of their parents at the very last second. And then what happens? As the child learns to walk more and more, the parent is further behind but still watching. And then you see that parents go from being completely involved in the child walking to standing and having a conversation, looking out of the corner of their eye at their child and guiding them, never taking their eyes off their child, but just being at a distance a little bit and still keeping track of what's going on. And any good parent would attest that when a child falls, the parent already saw it coming many times, and if they didn't, they know exactly how it happened. We see as children, we have this extraordinary trust as a child for our parents. And in fact, you even see that the bonds of a mother and a child are extraordinary bonds, as we see even with the life of Christ and the Virgin Mary. This bond that goes beyond death, it goes beyond life, it goes beyond the normal relations we have with people, but this very unique bond that we see. And when a child is small, they trust everything. You could put a child at the top of the stairs and go like this, and they would just kind of launch off. In fact, that was one of the issues, if you remember in not this Olympics, but the Olympics before, some countries were sending kids that were underage into the Olympics. And you say, well, why? What was that a big deal about? Well, it's because they hadn't developed fear yet. So the younger children hadn't really said, well, I could break my neck doing this. They didn't say that. They just went and did it. And if they broke their neck, they didn't even see it coming. And that was one of the reasons they have that age limit, is for not only for the equality of the competitors, but they also mentioned too that the child has not developed the sense of fear yet. So even the Olympic Committee understands the growth of fear, and I think that we see that as we go along in life. We go from children who are ready to launch into our parents' arms, to walk off something that might be dangerous, to stick our fingers in a plug just to see what's going to happen, and to put things in our mouth that, how many times did you get that swiped out? It could have been a shoe. It could have been something even worse. Who knows? But it was swiped out of your hand, and we just kind of trusted, this might be tasty. And then what happens? We grow, we learn how to walk, we become fully capable people. And then what happens? The doubt sets in. And the greatest doubt that the church reminds us not to have, to keep away from, is the doubt that God is right next to me. Now, as you think of a child learning to walk, Christ is the same way as the parent. He is there lifting us up, giving us those moments which everybody's had, one time or another, had a moment where you said, I feel the presence of God. That's probably why you're here, is because at some point in time, you felt it, you want it again, you need it, you want that peace inside, and you're struggling to find it. And we look for that over and over. And God gives us those things so that we have that understanding in the back of our head that God is there. Many times he gives us these small miracles that we might overlook, and sometimes in life, extraordinary miracles that we can't help but attribute to God at the moment, and then over time attribute to something else. So as we look at our lives, what happens from the trusting child to the distrustful adult? And what that is the fact that for whatever reason, when God gets us up on our feet and gets us in the right direction and lets go so that we can walk on our own, we feel he's abandoned us. But from a parental perspective, I don't think there's a high schooler alive in the world who would want their parents behind them with two fingers out walking them through the class to chemistry. And the child, this teenager, all right, Mom, I think I got this, hanging on to their fingers. This is really, I'm not even going to have any friends, and I'm going to get beat up before fourth period. There would be no way that would happen. Because what do we say? And then comes the time in a teenager's life where a public hug or a public kiss is forget it. All right, Mom, yeah, okay. Stay over there. These are, I can't mix that with this for whatever reason. We make that severance. And then as we grow older, it becomes even more. And I'm not saying that that's not healthy. I mean, it would be very unhealthy to be, hanging on your mom at a public thing, and, there needs to be that separation over time. However, when God does that, and he lets us go on our own a little bit, and we fall, we don't do what the small child does. The small child, when it falls, does what? Reaches for the parent. Where are you? Help me. And the parent comforts them. When we fall in our life, many times we feel that I fell and God was nowhere, and I'm not going to reach out to him because he let me fall. He let me fall. And I think that there has to be that understanding that a parent will let a child fall somewhat. Not off a cliff, but will let them walk a little bit and fall so that they can what? So they can learn, so they can grow, so they can become stronger, so they can become independent, but still knowing where they came from. And I think God does that for us too, but for some reason, our distrusting adult minds make us feel that it's abandonment, that he left us alone. And this failure, whatever it was, is something that we deserved, or something that God was mad at us, or whatever the case was. Now, there's a variance of phrases about mistakes and quotes throughout the years, and many of them started in the 18th century, which spoke about making mistakes. And you've probably heard one of the earliest renditions of that if you've ever watched some of the movies, and it says, no one who ever made a mistake ever made anything. Now, Albert Einstein said that, G.K. Chesterton said it, Theodore Roosevelt said it in various degrees, that no one who ever made a mistake has never made anything. And if you made a mistake, you're on your way to making something. But for whatever reason, when we make a mistake in the church or in our spiritual lives, we feel that it's devastating, that God has abandoned us and he has left us for whatever reason on our own. And all we have to do is just do what we did when we were children. Reach out and realize that God is not far away at all. He's right behind us. He's watching us and has an eye on us throughout our whole life, no matter what God is doing. He has this omnipotent eye that is able to see, understand, and be there instantaneously for us. And many times, he's there before we even come to that point of failure, warning us and telling us, to stop. Now, there's a movie that, I didn't think I was going to quote this morning, but there's a movie called Bruce Almighty. Has anybody ever seen that? Okay. And he's praying to God in the beginning of the movie. He feels so abandoned and lost, and he's praying, and he said he's driving his car like and he's like, God, help me. Give me a sign, and he's passing a sign on the road that says bridge out, dead end, all this kind of stuff, don't, turn around, go back, please, road closed ahead, giant cliff, and he drives right off an empty bridge. He's like, whoa, how come I didn't know that? Because the signs were coming at him and he completely missed them. And many times God is giving us these signs before we come to the point of making a mistake. But the reason I bring this up today for you is a couple reasons. The first is today is the feast day of St. Cyprian and St. Justina. Now, St. Cyprian was a hieromartyr, which is a very Greek translation of priest martyr. So he was a priest or a higher ieraeus, which means of the clergy. So we don't know exactly the rank when we say hieromartyr, but we do know that he was a clergyman martyr. And St. Justina was a virgin martyr. Now, St. Cyprian was a magician before he came to know God, before he came to know Christ. And he was asked by this pagan to make this beautiful Justina fall in love with him. And he said, this pagan came to him and said, I know you're a magician, I know you're a very powerful magician, and I want you to go and cast a spell on her so that she will fall in love with me. And it didn't work. And St. Cyprian, as it's referenced in the writings of him, started even yelling at the demons, because that's the kind of control and the depth of this demonic activity that St. Cyprian had at one point in time. And he was yelling at them, what's the matter with you? How come you can't do this? You are supposed to be the strong ones, and you can't make this girl, out of all the other girls that this has worked on, you cannot make this girl change her mind. And the reason was that St. Justina was prayerful. She was always asking God for help, always reaching out to him, always trying to make her life pure in every way. And then St. Cyprian, at the time, comes to realize that against the power of the cross, he had no power at all. And he came to know God, not that he was malicious against God before, but he did not know God. He came to know God. He himself converted, became a clergyman, and became a martyr for the faith. But one of the things that stands out from their lives that we celebrate today is the fact that St. Justina was not affected by this great demonic magician, this one who had the power over these demons. She wasn't affected. And why wasn't she affected? Was because she prayed, because she reached out to God. So there's something to be said about the mistake that was being forced to her through these negative prayers, if you even want to call it that, these negative requests. And it bounced off of her so that she didn't make a mistake, because she was asking God continually for help. Now, one of the things to do as we walk on our path and as we start to stumble is to realize that walking on our path, we have to be reaching out to God on that path and not fall and say, where is God? Because many times our fall will be stopped if we are prayerful before we come to that point. If we are contemplative in prayer, if we are reaching out to God, if we are living a life in the church, we won't come to the point where we fall flat on our face and say, where is God? He has abandoned me. So everyone is going to fall, and we are going to get up, and we are going to try again, and we are going to fall again, and we're going to try again. But the key to not making the pattern a desirable pattern is to break the pattern somehow. And break it through prayer, break it through fasting, break it through living a life in the church, and also realizing, too, that as you move on in life, God is right there behind you, holding you up in times when you're in need, and just letting you walk a little bit on your own so that you cannot be the dependent child that is walking through life like this. So we have to realize that God will stand back from us from time to time, but not leave us alone. He will let us walk a little bit and give us our legs. As everyone in this church at one point or another has claimed their independence with something in your life. I can do it, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing, I have this. We've all done that in one way or another. And God gives us a little bit of leeway to go on our own to see, where are you going to go? And if it's very off track, he'll stand and give us those signs to stop. But the one who walks the path in prayer and in liturgical celebration and being part of the church will never veer from the path that God has established for us. So as things go wrong in your life, as you make mistakes, just remember not to be the distrusting adult, but to be the child who will jump into the arms of the parents, and every time you feel yourself falling, jump prayerfully, liturgically, sacramentally into the arms of God. Amen.